Welcome. Great to have you with us. Thursday edition. As we roll forward, we start with, we'll keep the news local to start with, like we always do. Let's give Jalen Pickett a lot of credit. Gets a 4-year contract worth better than $8 million. 3 of the years with the Denver Nuggets are guaranteed. Friday, the Hawks will play the Nuggets. And so tomorrow the Hawks play the Nuggets, and that means that Seth Lundy, Andrew Funk, and Jalen Pickett will all be on the floor. Not bad. In fact, there's a chance they'll all be on the floor together. It means 30% of the people on the floor will be Penn Staters in Las Vegas. So that's tremendous. And that is now Seth has not signed his contract yet with Atlanta. But Jalen has. And the key is the 3 years that are guaranteed. That's the critical part right there. Yeah, it's a 4-year deal, but 3 are guaranteed. And he was the 32nd overall pick in the draft. It's something that Dick Girardi and I talked about repeatedly on the broadcast, because Dick had been talking to enough people in the NBA where they kept saying there's something about him, because he's not going to wow you with all the testing. He's not going to wow you with how high he jumps. He's not going to wow you with the sprints up and down the floor. But he has a basketball IQ. And for a guy that came out of high school and did not have any offers, so he went to prep school. I think he went to prep school in Ohio, I think. And then he came out of prep school, and then he got offers. Siena, Canisius, I think Niagara was the other one. So everything was local for him. Grew up in Rochester. And after 3 years at Siena, he said, look, I can play at a higher level. And that's where the door opened at Penn State. And that's where his career and his life took off. It took him a little bit to get used to this at this level. I'd say the first 3 weeks of his first season here at Penn State, I'm talking about games. And he's like, okay. And then all of a sudden there was a game where you looked at it and went, all right, now I'm starting to see it. And then from that point on, he controlled virtually every game he was in. I remember talking with several broadcasters along the way, and I remember this is the line I used when I was talking to Brian Anderson and Jim Jackson. And Jim said, what is it about him? I said, Jim, he has the ability to read the room in the first 5 minutes. Like, okay, what's working, what doesn't work, who's hot, who's not, how much do I need to score? I said, how much do I need to pass? I said, he can read the room in the first 5 minutes of each half as to what's going on. And I said, it makes the entire team better. And here he is, the 32nd overall pick in the draft. Seth went about where I thought he would, in the mid-40s. I think he ended up 46. And I talked to Seth last week. I saw Seth last week, talked to him for about maybe 10, 15 minutes. He is so excited to go. He may not have signed his contract yet, but he is excited to go. And he was excited to go to Las Vegas and be a part of the Summer League. And so that's going to be cool. Did not get a chance to talk to Andrew at all. But, he'll go out there. He has a skill set that the NBA absolutely values. Yes. Way downtown. That is a skill set that the NBA greatly values, because the point value of the three is special. So that is a big part for them, and looking forward to that. Next, Danny O'Brien, grad assistant. Okay. That's a great move, because guess what that means Danny O'Brien gets to be? On the field coaching. Danny has a real natural feel for how to play quarterback and how to teach it. He's really good at it. He sees a lot out there. And and remember, who was his coach at Maryland when he was at Maryland was James. And I remember when he decided to transfer, want to say it's when James left to go to Vanderbilt. I think that's when he wanted to transfer. And he visited here. I remember the spring practice he was at. I thought, ooh, this would be a good pickup. He ended up going to Wisconsin. It didn't work at Wisconsin. But the more you're around him, and I've been around him a lot, the more you like and respect him. He is one of the good young minds out there in college coaching. And I think getting into coaching was a huge plus for him, and the fact he's able to cut his teeth here at Penn State's a big plus for Penn State. We have talked a lot in the last week about name, image, and likeness. And James Franklin, in the conversation I had with him last week, right, about they need to be top 10 in everything. So James put out a tweet where he urged the fans to support NIL. And what he put out was this. He put out that every game we call for our 107 strong, hashtag 107K strong. Together we are locked in, committed, and show the tremendous power of the Penn State community. We need everyone, and everyone's capitalized, locked in on being 1-0 in the NIL race. There is power in our hashtag 750K living alumni, and we need everyone to take pride and compete now. Let's do this together, Nittany Nation. Donate to @Happy Valley United and United's UTD, and help us compete today, hashtag we are. We put that out yesterday afternoon, and this is something where if I've pointed this out several times, but I'm going to say it again. If this were a coach just obsessed with winning, it would ring, and you sit there and go, okay. But when you have a head football coach that is completely committed to the full mission of Penn State, committed to the full mission of his student athletes and understanding the student part in student athletes, that's the kind of coach you want to get behind. Those are the same values that Joe brought to the table with the grand experiment. Joe brought the values to the table that you could go to college, you could get a degree, and play great football at the same time. James Franklin sees the same thing. Why is the graduation rate for football continuing to be so high? We talk about the number of times during the course of the season that I hear him talk to his team after practice, not just about what happened in practice, but he'll talk to them about academics. He'll talk to them about life. Why is there a tax course every year that the players have to go through? Because they need it. It's about life. Why is it that he has people going to buildings on campus randomly to mark attendance? Because you are supposed to be in class, and he's making sure you are in class and that there are consequences if you aren't. You need to be sitting in the front row. You need to be on time. Have I talked yet about football? I haven't talked to anything about football yet. All right? And when a coach like that then appeals for NIL, you jump on board with it because he believes in all the other stuff that's made Penn State great over the years, and it's not lip service. Hey, we're all for academics. I love like blah, 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 blah. No. He gets up and he talks about sitting in the front row. He talks about being on time. He talks about, okay, You are not allowed to miss any class, right? Okay, here's one. Okay, Jason Lord, professor, says, hey, by the way, tomorrow's class is optional. Right? Guess who it's not optional for? The football players have been told by James Franklin in no uncertain terms, optional means you show. Okay? He believes in family. He believes in discipline. He believes in the university. He believes in the academic mission. And he wants badly to have championship football to go with all of that. Okay? You know, he talks all the time about, well, hey, it's special teams. He says, Steve, here at special teams, it's not lip service here, which it's not. The academics part, not lip service, not in the least. So anybody that's going through and pushing that hard on the academic mission, right? Take care of the little things, big things take care of themselves. Taking attendance in classroom, having random checks to do that, having consequences when people miss class, having consequences when they're late for class, right? Staying on track to get a degree, pushing them to get degrees in 3.5 years. Now he wants to make sure all of that goes into championship football, the grand experiment. You can have great academics, get degrees, and win championships. Well, that's what this is. There is no difference in the philosophical approach of James Franklin and Joe Paterno in terms of that part of it. Now, there's going to be differences as to how you coach, how you treat players. There's going to be differences in terms of schemes that you want to put in, how you want to play in today's game with the rules where they are and so forth. Yeah. But he knows that in order to do this, you need to embrace name, image, and likeness. Again, you may not be crazy about it because it's not the model you grew up on. But then again, up until the late 70s, you weren't making donations to the Nittany Lion Club to secure seats. And people adapted to that. People, they don't think twice about the fact that's the rule now. Well, that's the same with this, right? This is a way of making, maybe you thought, Penn State, I think, is like third in the nation in athletic endowments. Well, maybe you want to shift that over and go to NIL. It's up to, but this is a way for everybody to get involved, and they need everybody to get involved to do this. That's why it's so important to him. The last thing you want to do is let's go back 2 to 2.5 years. I talked about the advantage that certain schools were going to have in NIL. It was not a reality at that point, but I said there'll be certain schools that will have an advantage in this. I mentioned specifically Columbus because it is a hub of a lot of companies in the country. I think the tax structure is there in such a way where like Nationwide, Wendy's, people like that are all involved in that community. They've got some advantages there. They're also the largest city population-wise in the state of Ohio. USC, Los Angeles, right? Some people will tell you they invented the concept of NIL. Others will say it was Kentucky basketball. But we could debate that another day.
UNLV basketball may have had a little bit of.
Maybe. Right?
Miami football may have invented it before USC.
But Los Angeles is Los Angeles, and they're a private school.
Sure. Yeah.
They're a private school. Alabama. Now, Alabama's not in the, you look at Texas A&M, all the oil money. Yeah. But in Alabama, there are no pro teams in Alabama.
No.
So the fan base there considers Alabama and Auburn to some extent, but Alabama to be there, that's the state's pro team.
Right. In
terms of rooting interest. You've got all that. Here, of course, in Pennsylvania, you've got competition all over the place. Right?
Yeah, I think.
Well, you got 750,000 living alumni. You got a stadium with 107,000 people in it. And he's trying to give everybody the best chance possible to go out and not only recruit the athletes that are going to get degrees, but the ones that are going to win games for you.
Yeah, and those 750,000 have to help. Well, Penn State does sell itself, yes, but you also have to sell the area to what it is. And you mentioned it. The competition is tough for that reason. I'll add Texas in there too because of Austin. You have Texas, you have USC with Los Angeles, obviously Ohio State with Columbus. These schools, the big cities are there. The really opportunities for more NIL deals are there. This is where the alumni have to come together with Penn State as a university and obviously with James Franklin, and he's already doing it, and sell the university even more than you already have in the sense of, okay, here's why Happy Valley is an NIL location. Here is why you can be a student athlete, first and foremost, as you always are at Penn State, and you just mentioned it under James Franklin, what they do here as a student athlete, but also sell the program, sell the community, sell the area. That, okay, this is a safe area. This is an area with opportunities because we have dealerships here, 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 and here. We have restaurants here, 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 and here.
Right.
That is where you have to sell it a lot more now because of, one of the biggest things you said with Ohio State, Columbus, biggest city in Ohio, state capital. Texas, same thing, state capital.
And oil money.
And oil money, which is huge. Alabama, I even throw in, if they can get it turned around at some point in time, Nebraska because of the fan base, and Lincoln, not a pro football team there. I still think they've got a long, long, long way to go of all the programs I just named. But I think when you look at all of those schools and what they have to offer, you as a program at Penn State have done the job. Now as a community and as 750,000 alum have to come together and do the same thing. Okay, here's why Happy Valley is a location for you to go to school, for you to get a great degree. Yes, first and foremost, most important, you also can get NIL here, here, and here. Right. And that has to be sold now more than ever, without a doubt.
Yeah, and this is the way it is. If you want to compete,
absolutely.
I say this once. I've said it 100 times already. Look, you have two options.
Yeah.
You can sit there and go, nope, it's not the way college sports should be.
Right.
Right? Do not then be the first person to call into the talk show and say, he should be fired. They're 4-8.
Yeah.
But excuse me, like they asked for your help and you didn't help.
You said no. Yeah, absolutely.
You said no. Right?
Yep.
Right? The idea of this is to be involved financially, right? And not everybody can do it. I understand that.
Yeah,
okay?
absolutely.
Everybody. I understand.
That's where word of mouth sells,
right?
Just as much.
But by the way, donations. I believe you go to the website. Donations start at $25 a month.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. Well. All right. And the idea here is not just to donate to win 8-9 games. I mean, James wants to win the whole thing.
Absolutely.
He wants to win the Big Ten championship. He wants to win playoff games, and he wants to win the national championship. Well, guess what? You don't do that by being stubborn in your position about it.
Right.
You need to adapt to what the rules are. The rules say you can do this, and guess what?
And
you need to be one of the first people out there that's saying, hey, look, we're right here in line. And Penn State's been fighting from behind since this started out.
Absolutely.
Have they gained some ground? Yeah, they've gained some ground, but they need to gain more ground.
A lot more
ground.
A lot more. Yeah, and that's, again, that's where everything has to come to play. And you talk about the fan not supporting it. There are coaches, and there are coaches that just can't adapt to it. There are legendary coaches couldn't adapt to it, and they're not coaching anymore. And that's fine. It's not. I don't want to say it's not for everybody because it's literally the way it is right now. As you said, it's not. You have to adapt to it if you're going to coach in college football and college sports. Period. Some coaches have not adapted to it, and look, that's the way it is. Some of them got out of it, and some of them may be on their way out of it. Others have to figure out a way to adapt to it. But that being said, you can't complain about it at this point. We're in year 3 now.
Right.
And that's
the way it is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the way it is. It's not going away. You either accept it or, like you said, you either lose or you get out of it entirely. And that's not, there's no shame in stepping aside because I don't want to say the game has passed you by. The game doesn't pass you by, but the game is so different right now. You just couldn't adapt to it. That's not, it's like any other job. Sometimes it doesn't fit you. And some of these legendary coaches, NIL does not fit them. They're no longer coaching now. They got out of it, whether it was via retirement on their own or via being forced out, one way or another.
Right.
Yeah, there are a lot of coaches that have not been able to do it, but Nick Saban can now not say anything else about NIL. We're in the third year of it, and the SEC may be catching up to him. Okay, now it's your turn to adapt to it. You talked about with Alabama; they don't have a professional sports team there.
No.
And the SEC, Georgia has pro sports teams. Georgia's got great pro sports teams. Mm-hmm. They have a football team that is struggling dramatically in the NFL, but they have a new stadium there. Yeah. They have a lot of stuff there when it comes to that. You have the Hawks, who are a young team that has a superstar. Obviously, the Braves are the Braves. Hawks, I would give Trae Young a nod as a superstar, unfortunately. You're saying no? I sadly would probably say yes.
No.
But, yeah.
When you were voted by the other players in the league as the most overrated player?
That tells you something.
That's not good.
Yeah. But the Hawks are still a respectable team, I think.
James has done a great job.
Certainly has.
Of building a championship culture.
Yeah.
Right? But you have to keep adding it to it over and over again. You have to add to it,
and you have to add the support.
Okay.
To add to it.
Everyone is excited about having Nicholas Singleton on the team. Mm-hmm. Everyone is excited about having Abdul Carter on the team. Everyone's excited about having Drew Aller on the team. Sure. And I'm just scratching the surface here. Well, how do you think in the future you get the Abdul Carters, Nicholas Singletons, and Drew Allers of the world? How do you get them? Yeah. Okay? How do you get the Olu Fashionus of the world down the road? How do you get them with the current rules? You got to be able to, the NIL is going to play a key part in it.
Sure.
Okay?
Especially now even more because, look, the PIAA has already accepted it. Every other high school in the country at some point.
Remember we had Bob Lombardi on the show talking about that.
Yeah. And every other high school association in the state in the country is going to have to adapt to it at some point.
Sure.
You will be seeing that. You will probably at some point now slowly being the key word. It's going to be a long time. You will slowly see that gap between public and Catholic come closer. Mm-hmm. I think with NIL now being a factor, I think it's going to take a while. This isn't going to happen like that. I don't want anybody saying, "Oh, Jason, you've been around high school sports long enough. You should know Catholic schools are far superior." They're going to be superior for a while still, but I do think that gap does close, and it's because of NIL. And I think from a national perspective, they're going to do what the PIAA has done. They're going to accept it. Who knows how far it goes? Who knows? Could we be seeing sixth graders getting NIL? Who knows?
Yeah.
Bottom line, it's not going away. It's only going to get bigger, and you have to adjust to it. Not only have to adjust to it, you have to build on it, and you have to support it from the outside. And that's where, from a Penn State perspective, I think that's where they're behind still. They've got to catch up with that support of NIL.
Right. I mean, it's just the way everything is today.
Yeah, it's only going to get. I don't want to say worse. It's going to get bigger. Not worse. Bigger.
And again, I go back 45 years, 46, 47 years. Hey, you know what? In order to help the entire athletic department, we need to make a donation for seats. People adapted then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, adapted to the Nittany Lion Club donation, adapted to STEP.
Because they knew it would help.
Adapted to STEP, too.
Right? STEP program, they had to adapt. Mm-hmm. They were asked to adapt. They did adapt.
And they did, though.
Right? And the same thing here. You're being asked to adapt.
Yeah.
Because if Penn State doesn't adapt,
you can't sustain it.
Then guess what?
Yeah.
Right? Okay? Don't be the one complaining at the tailgate.
Absolutely. I agree.
Right? Don't be the one, it's the scheme. It would help they had a couple of extra, It's amazing what star players mean. You saw that so graphically last year. Okay, what did star players mean? Olu, Singleton, Allen, right? Abdul Carter. How excited are you watching Abdul Carter out there play defense at linebacker? Deny Dennis Sutton, Chop. Holy mackerel, like it's amazing what the star power meant. They're really good. How, in the future, how do you get them? You just wave a magic wand and say, go to Penn State, and everybody goes, oh, great. We have a wonderful campus, great academics, and the whole thing. At some point, a question is going to be asked. I know name, image, and likeness is part of this, part of the rules. So, what are my options there? It's going to be asked. We have a great engineering program. Good. I want to be an engineer.
But
okay, at some point, even that person is going to ask, what are my options on name, image, and likeness? It is going to come up. It comes up in every conversation. Even if the subject is hesitant to bring it up, they still know they have to bring it up.
Yes.
Because everybody's built differently. Some people are like, hey, I hesitate to ask this, but like, what are the NIL options up there? Other people have talked to me about it. Right? I mean, recruiting isn't the same as it was. 10 years ago. It's not the same as it was. Definitely the same as it was 30 and 40 years ago.
No,
this is a primary topic that is coming up. It may not be. It may, for some recruits, it'll be the first thing they talk about it. Some.
Yeah.
For some, it might be the last thing they bring up. But the common denominator is all of them will bring it up at some point.
Absolutely. And
even if they're sheepish about asking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it's no different than, I know they say this isn't your grandfather's team, et cetera. This isn't your grandfather's sport, et cetera. At some point, those that are on the outside against this, say you were at a job, you were shy to ask for a raise time and time again, and your work was going unnoticed. Would you finally ask for a raise at some point? I think that answer is yes. Yeah. So I think to me, and that's where, look, these guys are going to ask it, and they need to. And area, we talk about, it is a little bit of a disadvantage, the location, yes, but that's where the alums have to step in.
Well,
and I would make the argument, a place like Rutgers is in worse shape. They don't have that driving alumni to go behind them and that support that Penn State has. And that's where it hurts even worse. But you still have to adapt to it. And that's where these programs have got to step in and do that. And these supporters have to do that.
Now let's get to another part that's important. Why is it about 30 to 40% of the players, the student athletes, have to get Pell Grants? Why? Because that means they are financially eligible to get Pell Grants. Well, you're financially eligible to get a Pell Grant because at home, the income level is not that high.
Not high, yeah.
So there's a lot of pressure on these young people coming out.
Sure.
I'll give you an example of somebody who's doing really well right now. We all know that Adrian Amos is doing really well. I think he just signed a contract with the New York Jets.
Yep.
Got picked by the Bears, then made a lot of money with the Packers, and now is making a lot of money with the Jets. I couldn't be happier for him. But I remember one day going in, and I just sat there, it was maybe 7 to 10 players and me, and I was just talking about money with them. And so this is going back when Adrian played here. So that was like the late 2000s, early 2010, 11, somewhere in there. I'm just sitting in the locker room talking with them about this. And one of the players brought up to me, he says, you get to certain times of the year. He says, now this is before nutrition bars and things like that. Remember that, okay?
Yeah.
So, we got to eat some ramen noodles a lot, several nights a week. And I was like, okay. Nutrition bars now, of course, are the norm, so they don't have a problem.
Yeah.
And I asked about the Pell Grants. And I said, how important were the Pell Grants for those guys? And Adrian looked over at me and he said, Mr. Jones, he says, every time I get something like that, he says, I send it home. they get the money for it, the cash for it, and he sends it home.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, because obviously, you already have your scholarship taken care of, but you can still apply for the Pell Grant money. Well, and the other players nodded. There's probably 3 or 4 others in the group that were getting Pell Grants. They all said the same thing. Yeah, we send the money home.
Yeah.
Why? Well, because number one, the family was eligible for the money, and because they were eligible for it because they met certain financial guidelines. In other words, not making a lot. And so that was his way of helping out. And the 3 or 4 other players in the group all nodded and said they did the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, that brings it now to today. Those same financial hardships are there.
Even more.
Okay?
Yeah.
There are a lot of players, 30 to 40% of them, that qualify for Pell Grants.
Yep.
And that tells you that when they sit down as a family and they get recruited, you don't think that family's not going to ask about the NIL possibilities?
Sure.
That's how I'm drawing this back.
Yeah,
okay?
There's no question.
Okay, and they're going to ask about it because guess what?
They need
the
to.
family, okay? They need to because they need it.
Yeah, and that's a big reason. And even prior to NIL existing, you talked about the Pell Grants. You look at these players that thankfully get the full scholarships. Absolutely. You look at the first thing they do when they sign a major contract, they buy a house and pay off their mom's car or whatever it is.
Oh, what'd Saquon do?
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing. And that's because, they went through what they went through for these athletes to get to where they got. And there is no reason for them not to ask about NIL. And that's why it's so frustrating when people talk about it and just frown about it completely.
Yeah.
Now, is the current model sustainable? We've said it from time and time again. No, it's not.
It's not sustainable. But right now,
right now there's not a further plan to do what you're going to do with it. But they have every right. These players have every right to ask about it. They are not being greedy. That's a load of crap. They are not being greedy in any way, shape, or form when these families ask about NIL.
And let's face it, they're sitting with their families.
Absolutely.
It may be mom, dad, maybe just mom, maybe grandparents.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe just
guardians. Absolutely.
Okay? You don't know. Everybody comes, and believe me, are there certain people that make money?
Sure.
And are financially solvent and have zero issues financially, and their son ends up being a star quarterback at a program? Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we think Josh Rosen was poor?
Yeah. Johnny Manziel
can't be. His family's like incredibly well off. Like, okay, great.
Yeah.
But because it's a cross section.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody's going to ask about it now, and they're going to walk into a stadium with
and for good reason, rightfully so,
with 107,000 people.
Yeah.
Watching you perform.
Yeah, and I go back to...
Of course they're going to ask about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I go back to the Fab Five. I go back to, yes, they took money. That's a no-brainer. They can deny it all they want.
Yeah.
But I think you look at that team, and I remember Chris Webber going by, seeing his jersey and saying, they're selling that for $59.99. It's a lot more now, but they're selling it for $59.99, and I can't even put gas in my car.
Well,
that's what a lot of these athletes at that time. No, I'm not talking about Michigan. Yeah, that's
okay.
He makes the point
you did not sit on the bus at Michigan waiting at shoot around for Michigan to finish its practice.
No.
And then watch them all walk out to their cars, and you sat back and went,
yeah.
Wow, I work for a living. I can't drive that.
I remember.
I sat there. I'm talking about my eyes saw this, okay?
There's no doubt.
Okay.
But he makes the point, is the key point. He makes the point.
This isn't like secondhand information, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. He makes the point, though, that is valid to those who did not get what the Fab Five got.
Right.
and did not get what Terrell Pryor got at Ohio State with gold pants or whatever he traded. But
okay, what about the plain brown envelope that was
that
in the
too,
locker
that
of
too,
certain
and Two Live Crew giving Miami football bounty money and everything else. But I think the other guys and girls who did it the right way, Chris Webber, even though denied all he wants, he took money. I don't get Michigan. Michigan not acknowledging him as BS. I would agree with that part of it. But he makes the point that I think is valid at that time. He
and the whole group should be honored.
There's not a doubt. Not a doubt. And that's not a doubt. That team was in the national championship 2 straight years. And for him to make that point, though, is the most valid point of all. And it's why these players deserve what they are. Some of them are getting right now, and what a lot of them will be getting right now.
Right.
They deserve it.
And back to Penn State. Ask yourself, what do you want from the program? Okay. What do you want from the program?
Yeah.
Right? Do you want it to compete for a championship? Or do you want them to be middle of the road?
Yeah. And that's fans that have to ask that question.
That's what I'm saying. You have to ask yourself, what do you want from Penn State football?
Yeah.
Do you want them to compete for the whole deal? Or do you want them to be middle of the road?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right? I've asked this question before when they decided to break up divisions. And this year they'll go divisions. Next year they'll go 1 through 16. And I've asked the question, is finishing 6th good enough?
Yeah, and now that question becomes a lot tougher. Now that and you just hit on it, because divisions are going to be going away, and that Iowa team or that Purdue team that was 2nd in the West is now 7th in the Big Ten. Suddenly, that question becomes even more magnified. Is it good enough? Because suddenly
you want to be fighting for the top 2 and get to the championship game with the idea you can win that championship game, and guess what? That means an automatic bye in the first round of the 12-team playoff, right? But you don't want to be finishing 6th.
No.
People get fired when they finish 6th.
They sure do.
Right? I didn't say 16th.
No.
I said 6th.
6th. You win 9 games, you get fired in a lot of places. Right. Now, was it the right move? No, it wasn't the right move in Nebraska all those years ago. But
I'm saying, though, I can't believe it. Well, guess what? This is now the time where we've talked about this.
And there are some coaches that may not even get the chance to fully blossom their recruits and get fired.
I know.
And you finish 5th or 6th. That's right now.
But
the era that we're living in.
And that's going to be something moving forward that you have to ask that question. Now that they're doing away with divisions, is finishing 6th good enough?
Agreed.
Well, let's face it. For what Penn State's doing, Penn State is not playing for 6th. They're playing for 1.
They're playing for 1.
Well, when you're playing for 1, you've got to compete in every way to be 1.
Yep.
And that means you need to compete in NIL.
100%. Absolutely.
As I said last week, James wants to be the top 10 in everything. Top 10 stadium, top 10 fan base, top 10 facilities, top 10 nutrition, top 10 academics, top 10 wellness, top 10 training staff, top 10 doctors, right? Top 10 coaching staff, right? Top 10 academic personnel.
Yeah.
Right? Top 10 weight and strength and conditioning program. Top 10 NIL. You can, if you're top 10 in all that stuff, you're competing for the whole thing.
Every year.
You're competing for the whole thing.
Absolutely. Every year. And a smart coach, as James is, no question, is going to market everything, is going to brand everything, and that's what he does. And when you are able to do that, you are not only calling out the alum to support, you're also calling out, and what I think is the one thing that has been exceptional, especially with Singleton, you're calling that local community to where that guy played high school football or girl played high school football to support him, and Berks County, Reading area has done it with Singleton. There's not a doubt about that. Not a doubt about that. You're now calling everybody else, hey, this guy's playing for Penn State. He was playing under those Friday night lights. last year.
Right.
Here's your chance to support them. And that's what a great coach does. That's what a marketable coach is going to do, and James does that. And that's something else that you have to do as a coach that is going to keep your program at the top tier.
Right.
And that's what he does, and that's what coaches have to do. You can't complain about it, or you start to lose the ability to stay in that top tier.
Right. Yeah. But this is what it comes down to. This is, you can't, we're now in an era where you can't ask your coach to compete. You just can't ask your student athletes, your players to compete. All of you have to join in and compete.
Yep.
You're competing with the Ohio State fan base. You're competing with the Michigan fan base. You're competing with the USC fan base. You're competing with the Texas, Alabama fan bases. Because guess what? You're trying to do everything you can, and maybe you can't afford a lot, but you're trying to do everything you can to help Penn State put a winning product on the field. Now, until there are parameters with these rules, this is just the way it's going to be.
It's going to be. Yeah, it is. And it is absolutely the way it's going to be. And again, even, you talked about $25 a month being that low end, and I can't stress it enough, word of mouth. Word of mouth is free. You can sell that university with ease without at times, if you can't afford to open that pocketbook, you still can be a factor. No question about it.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So,
and we've seen Penn State do it. We've seen people come together, and look, this is not a comparison to NIL before I state this stuff, but look at how much this town comes together for Thon. Look at how much this town comes together for the blood drive donations against Michigan State.
Sure.
Those are things that you compete yourself to outcompete the others, and you can do that. You can outcompete Michigan and Ohio State fan bases. You have a strong enough alum association to do it, and you have to do it. This is where I think the time is to be able to do that.
And look, as you know, I've done a lot of speaking engagements over the last 2 months. I pointed that out already. I'm asked about it, because I always open up for questions.
Yeah.
And because I want to talk to people about what they want to talk about, not just what I want to talk about. I mean, they're all there. Let's talk about what you want to talk about. Well, guess one of the, every time, sometimes it's multiple questions. Sometimes it's just a question. When I was at Hazleton, it was one. Okay? But when I went down to Hilton Head, 2/3 of the conversation was about NIL. Right? And it's something where people want to talk about, get answers. Are there some people that have concerns? But then you explained it. When you explained to everybody, okay, well, here are your options. Your options are, no, that's not the way college sports should be. I said, but the team's 4-8. Well, I think you should be fired. Really? Did you give him a shot?
Yeah.
Did you give him the best shot possible to win? Right? No, that's not the way college sports should be. Well, I'm sorry. That's the way it is. See this guy over here? This guy over here is following the rules right now.
Yeah.
It says you can do it. Right? Or you can adapt and say, I may not be able to do a lot, but I can do some. Right? That's fine because your sum adds up to her sum, adds up to his sum, adds up to her sum, and all of a sudden you've got a sum.
Absolutely.
Right? So that's where it is right now. Because Penn State is in the thick of its recruiting. I know it's a dead period right now, but they're in the thick of this recruiting. They're getting some terrific commitments. But let's face it, you want to reach for the stars with this thing. And right now, under the current system, there is a lot of ways to do it, and this happens to be one of the primary ways to do it. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where people talk about a lot of things that have changed with recruiting. It's bigger than ever.
Yeah.
And a prime example of it is you look at the high school all-star games that we grew up to.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
Big 33 was the Super Bowl of high school football, and it was. They drew 18,000 at Hershey.
Yeah.
Now you're seeing those enrollees have to go to college sports. That's the way
Right.
it is right now.
Sure it
They're
is.
making your program better.
Oh, the day
And-
used to be in July. Now they play the thing
Now they
in
play
May.
it in May. Yeah, they have to. And that's a big thing, and it's not even the radar anymore in terms of all-star games nationally. Not even close. And that is where the sacrifices that people have to make, and that's now the sacrifices that we as alum and we as fans have to make as well.
I mean, the system's all different now.
Completely.
It's just the way it is. I mean, hey, I give credit to anybody who's played in the Big 33.
A ton of credit. Joe Montana played, and Dan Marino played in the Big 33. Ben Roethlisberger played.
Every conversation cannot come back to Joe Montana. He went to
He
Notre
did.
Dame.
Shame on him for that. I
Okay?
agree. Shame on him for that.
He
I
went to Notre
I know.
Dame.
And Dan Marino went to Pitt. So it's even that's double whammy.
Right.
Ben Roethlisberger at least manned up and went to Miami, Ohio. But
Oh,
it's those guys all played in the game, and that game was at massive at one point. Now you're relying on those guys to enroll early and make your college program massive. So the game is different now, and
all that stuff's gone by the wayside.
it is, and it has to. It has to because of
When I broadcast high school football, right back in the 80s,
hmm
the season ended on a November Friday night.
hmm
There was no playoff. Then the last year I did it, they played in a championship game and won it down in Huntington. And that was when Ron Dickerson Jr. was on
Yep.
the team, people like that. Right now, there are playoffs that go into December, and it's a state championship. I mean, the
Yeah.
state championship,
Fortunately, they
What-
moved it up. At least we're not
Right.
playing the Saturday before Christmas,
right?
which
but,
was terrible.
right. But I'm saying, yeah, well, the 12-team college football playoffs going to
Yeah,
play on that
I
day. Okay.
From a high school perspective,
right.
I think it's a little worse.
But it was a mythical state championship
Yeah,
back
At that time,
in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
yeah, late
Burr-
80s they played Beaver Stadium.
Hey, Berwick, hey, it's like, great. Berwick's really good, but I mean, they're the national champion. Like, really? I mean, okay. Hey, what are you, UCF? No.
No, but Berwick proved it down the road, unlike UCF.
Yeah. So, but that's the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, things have changed.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Tomorrow we're going to have on Neil Coulong on the NFL. We're going to have on Joe Putnam because the Spikes open up a 3-game weekend home set. So we'll have Joe Putnam on the show tomorrow as well, and we'll preview the weekend for the State College Spikes. Ryan Snyder on Monday's show. And what is that shirt?
I believe it is just the
You own
normal
it.
design. Yep.
It's just a design.
I like the design of the shirt, and I figured why not. And it was free. So any kind of free shirt.
Right, and then you destroyed your thumb.
Yeah, I did. I'll tell you.
What'd you do with that?
No fireworks. Had a hangnail that just stuck there.
Okay.
So after a while, I'm just now remedying it to the point that it just goes away at some point, hopefully.
Well, with Mission Impossible Day of Reckoning Part 1 coming up, I'd like to point out one of the great lines from Mission Impossible from the movies. Hope is not a strategy.
Yeah,
Oh, you must be new.
that's right.
We just have to hope they've never met. Hope's not a strategy. Oh, you must be new. All right.